Just go solo.
This is Solo Travel Talk. Your solo travel advisor is Astrid Clements.
If I say canals, bridges, Carnival, and Italy, you might think of Venice. On this edition of Solo Travel Talk, Astrid is going to profile Venice, Italy as a destination for the solo traveler. I'm producer Catherine, and personally, I'm hoping for a lot of gelato talk. Listeners, get ready to experience Venice on this episode, plus why and how you can go. Astrid, we decided to open this destination episode with you sharing a bit of a theme that captures the feel, the experience of being a visitor to Venice.
Well, Venice is really absolutely should be on everybody's bucket list. Venice is like nowhere else. And I'll just start this podcast with just a couple of adjectives that I think really describe Venice and then go into some of the things that, the adjectives really are tied to. But Venice is first and foremost totally unique. It is really such a unique city for a lot of different reasons. It's very historic. It's decadent. It's gorgeous and so atmospheric. One of its biggest qualities that people really are drawn to, it's so mysterious. It's like there's always something hidden there, or it's like there's a mystery here and a mystery there, and you can feel it. You can feel it in the buildings when you go inside, when you walk through the different alleyways and the pedestrian thoroughfares. So it's unique, historic, decadent, gorgeous, atmospheric, and mysterious. Venice really was not supposed to be a city at all. It's one of these places where it was almost impossible to build anything. It's basically in a marsh area. And how it came to be in the very first of its evolution was it was a hiding place. It was a hiding place for different tribes from barbarian invasions, etc. Well, it had some pretty good strategic locations in terms of shipping. It happened that certain people stayed there and they decided they were going to build a city there. So here they start building using a phenomenal engineering feat of all these timbers that they put into the mud, into the marsh, and they were able to create one of truly the most beautiful cities in the world that still looks very much like it did starting in the Renaissance time. So it's just a special place, first of all, that it wasn't even supposed to be there. Then secondly, there are no cars there. I mean, how wonderful is that of a place? There are no cars. So whenever you want to get anywhere, it's either by boat, water taxi, vaporetto, or gondola, or on foot. So that makes it so unique because there's really no hustle and bustle per se with, anything that brings traffic. And because has not been any kind of motorized traffic in Venice, there hasn't really been any real development in terms of modern buildings and a lot of modern kinds of things that go into a modern metropolis. So that in itself it gives the whole city a completely different feel. So in the way it started and the fact that there are no cars, that sets the tone. Now, Venice also is, I'm pretty sure, the only city that the entire city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So you can't really change any of the architecture or anything that has to do with its history unless you go through a big process. So with that also, it's hardly changed in the last 500 to 600 years in terms of architecture and I guess you'd say just character. So that makes it really just so wonderful for the solo traveler. I mean, when you first step out or get out of the Vaporetto or your water taxi or whatever, you just feel like, oh my God, I feel like I'm stepping back in time. And I know when I first started traveling in Europe, one of my favorite things was to go to Paris and Brussels and Rome and all these different places, and they all had such unique characters, and they had, their own feel. Well, a lot of that is changing now because of all the modernity, the fast food restaurants and the cars, etc. That, these big cities are very much like big cities all over the world. Venice is not like that at all. Venice is like the European cities, or like traveling to different places in Europe was in the 60s and the 70s. So that in itself is just wonderful. You just really feel like, oh, this is just really going to be interesting and a lot of fun, and so it's really special. Some of the other things that make it so special, besides the architecture, etc., is the way it's actually laid out. It's laid out like in 6 different districts or neighborhoods, and, they're all connected by all of these bridges or canals. I mean, you actually can walk all over Venice. Now, you're going to be dead tired, I can tell you. But you can really walk all over Venice, and that's very unique. There are not a lot of places that you can do that. And because it's such a walkable city, I really found it to be very safe. And I think some of that is really here again because you don't have the motorized traffic and all of that. So you don't have a lot of the different things that would cause some places to be less safe. Also, in Venice, it's pretty expensive, and so there are only, I think it's 60,000 inhabitants that actually live there. And, a lot of the real expensive real estate in the best parts of town, nobody lives in those buildings and those apartments. They're just held by very wealthy investors from out of the country. So, they only live in specific areas. And, I just found it to be very safe. And like I said, it's very walkable. Now, in these different districts, you can see the way old Venice was really, it evolved. It always had some kind of campo or square, and around the square they had the church, and then they had the well, and they had like the shops and the little cafes and the schools, and then the areas where people lived, and then you go through some more alleyways and it opens up to another square, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it's very it has to me, kind of a Mediterranean feel, not totally, but kind of. So that makes it wonderful. And then on top of the way that's created, you've got these palazzos that are in the middle of some of these neighborhoods or on the main canals, and these are the palaces of the very wealthy merchant families that really got Venice started as the capital of trade and banking in the Renaissance. I mean, this place was like the New York City financial district of the world, because the spice trade and a lot of trade from the east and then the trade from the west, Venice was basically one of the big ports where they really did a lot of the business. So you've got these many of these gorgeous palazzos, these big mansion palaces where people lived, where they worked, where they did their business, and where they warehoused their goods. And these palaces are like no other palaces I've seen anywhere else in the world, because first of all, they're right on water, and a lot of them, it does flood in Venice. So they're made of a lot of marble and a lot of stone, and they just have such a real kind of cold but opulent quality to them. And then when they couple it with their fabulous fabrics and artwork and Venetian glass chandeliers, I mean, they have a style that really is totally unique. It's a blend of a lot of different things, but it's unique to Venice. So here again, I keep saying unique because Venice really is unique. It's Italian, but it's unique, okay? So you've got these wonderful palazzos, and then just not only that it's organized in these 6 different areas or big neighborhoods, they have the one big focal point of Venice, which is Piazza San Marco or St. Mark's Square. And this was a long time ago where all the pageantry was, anything official, you know, people went there to see and be seen. This is where the Doge Palace is, of which that's where, well, the Doge actually, he, you know, in every other country in Europe, they were either ruled by kings or queens or the Vatican, but not in Venice. In Venice, the Doge, who was I guess the puppet king or ruler, he really had no power, just like Queen Elizabeth. And it was the wealthy families from the different neighborhoods. They were the ones that had the real power, and they were the ones that elected whoever the Doge was. And I'll never forget when I went on the tour of the Doge Palace. Oh, it was a fabulous tour because you get to understand a lot of how Venice worked and how it was really mysterious, even the way they governed themselves. They had all these kind of secret ballots on top of ballots, and nobody ever really knew who the Doge would be until the very end. Oh, it was fascinating. Everything in Venice has kind of like a mystery.
I was going to say, that's the intrigue and the mystery you were mentioning.
Yes, there's been intrigue woven through, like I said, the architecture, the clothes they wear. I mean, it's not happenstance that the mask was really used there. I mean, in other places in Europe, it was for balls and gala affairs, but in Venice, in a certain period of time, they wore it to dinner. They wore masks to casinos. They wore masks to do business. I mean, you know, they might not wear masks all the time every day, but they wore a lot of masks. And so it's very interesting. So you have the Doge Palace, which is magnificent. Then you have the gorgeous Basilica. Oh, this gorgeous Renaissance church is just magnificent. Then also in St. Mark's Square, you've got 3 sides of it has this beautiful, what I call a passage or passaggio. And it used to be where all the governmental offices are, but now it's nothing but upper-end shops. And I'm going to go into a little bit about shopping in Venice later on the podcast, but these shops, this is really one of the most exclusive areas to buy things. It is expensive because it's a lot of times, you know, one of the only areas where tourists to Venice go to shop, because typically people only go to Venice for 1 or 2 days. They think they've seen it all, which is so not true. But, you know, this Passaggio area is beautiful with all these shops. Then, along with it, you've got all of these, or there are 4 key cafes that are not only, you can sit inside or you can sit outside in the big piazza. And it is beautiful because these cafes have, you know, wonderful seating. They have orchestras or little chamber orchestras playing, and they either play jazz or classical music or all different kinds of musical genre. They serve you on silver. I mean, you can have, you know, lunch, small plates, dessert, cappuccino, you know, drinks. It's just wonderful. I mean, I made it to all of the cafes. I mean, every day or every other day, I ended up in one of them to have. I know one it's Cafe Laverno, I think, but this is where Richard Wagner used to hang out. And I saw this lady. I sat down. I saw this lady have this blue drink, and I thought, you know, I don't know if that looks good, but it just does look real good. And, Venice and Venetian blue, they have blue all over Venice. So I decided, I'm going to try the Blue Lagoon. Oh, my God, that was really good. So that was Cafe Laverno, then Cafe Florin, which is, so snooty and old. It's wonderful. I had espresso and gelato there, which gelato in Venice is really to die for. I mean, it's great all over Italy, but gelato in Venice is they really go to town. They really try to be the gelato capital of the world.
This is what I've been waiting for. All that gelato talk.
I tell you. And then the other one is Cafe Quandri, which it's likewise very much like Cafe Florin, very kind of European-like. But upstairs is a 1-star Michelin restaurant. And if you like fancy food, you're in Venice, you definitely need to go to Restaurant Quandri, above Cafe Quandri on the Piazza San Marco. It is wonderful. I had a lunch. And first of all, it's a very small dining room of basically just 2 rooms. It's beautifully appointed in kind of a mixture of a old world Venice with the red damask fabric padded walls and the Venetian chandeliers and dark wood. But then it also has some very contemporary looking art on the wall that's actually painted on like a piece of board. They did a very good job of mixing a contemporary and an old world feel. Like all of the plates that you ate on were all different Venetian blown glass. Ooh. And they were they had a modern look to them, but it was an old, it's an old technique to do this kind of china. It's beautiful. So I had this wonderful lunch that was a mixed seafood platter. And this platter had seafood on it that I couldn't tell you what I was eating. It was all these weird urchins and everything. And Venice is known for its different food, and especially its seafood. Well, Cafe Quandri can do it like no other. I mean, they had it was basically like a steamed seafood, these different types of sea urchins. But then they had the most fabulous sauces on each one of them. It was really to die for. And then I had some kind of different mousse, I can't really remember. And I had my first Bellini there. So, and it was the most wonderful breadsticks. I mean, that's another thing about Venice. Their breadsticks there are just fabulous. So that whole area of Piazza San Marco is great. And really, you need to just allow one whole day to be there. And also know you're going to be passing by that, if you stay more than 2 days, and you're starting to wander around in the different neighborhoods, you're going to end up at Piazza San Marco.
At some point or another.
Yeah, it just all leads back. Yeah. All roads lead back to Piazza San Marco. So, it's different that way in terms of it's all laid out as a city that focuses in on this big square, and it's still exactly the same way. I mean, nothing really has changed about where the power has shifted to or anything like that. So that just really, I think, makes this whole place so unique, because it's like it's a snapshot in time. It really hasn't changed a whole lot, except people have changed in terms of modern ways. But not a whole lot. So, if you really, if you love architecture or classical architecture, if you're interested in eating different, really unusual Italian foods, because I'm going to get into that. Their Italian food is not like the Italian food you're going to eat in the South. Or even in Milan or Rome, it is different,
It sounds like everything has like the little Venetian flair to it.
It does. It does. It really has. It has an exotic flair to it. And I think that does come from the Eastern influence. You know, it had a lot of influence from Turkey, and it even was at war with Turkey at one time. And so, you know, it has, you know, it has that influence. But you know, on top of all of that, there is kind of a savoring of life in family in Venice that I feel like that is really strong. I mean, you know, that was the way it was all over Europe a long time ago, but it's really changing. I think it's still like that in Venice because I can tell you, you know, during the lunch hour, you'll see friends outside standing on the bridges just talking. You know, I would think, oh, well, I guess they're getting ready to go eat. But no, I think they were just catching up like, you know, how's everything, or what are you going to do this afternoon, or whatever. They communicate with each other. So I really just want to say La Dolce Vita is alive and well in Venice. And I think maybe more so than anywhere else in mainland Italy. I don't know. I shouldn't say that because I haven't been down to some of the eastern parts and some of the little bit more not totally rural parts, but as a big city, and Venice is a big city, it does have that real La Dolce Vita quality with that Venetian exotic twist. It's different from any other Italian city, but I hadn't been to Italy. The last time I went to Venice was last year, and I hadn't been to Italy probably in about 10 years. And the minute I got off the Vaporetto, I said, you know, why haven't I gone back to Italy again and again? I just love Italy. And you feel it. You feel it in Venice.
So since this is a destination episode, what are some of your musts for any solo traveler to Venice, and how can the visitor get the most out of their Venice trip?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you're a photographer, this is a photographer's paradise. Venice is truly as good as it gets when it comes to taking photographs. The light there is gorgeous. I mean, you can take fabulous photographs with your eyes closed. It's just wonderful, whether it's at dusk or dawn or during the bright sunny days or, you know, when the fog is in. I mean, Venice and all of the architecture and the people and just it is just never ending. If you like to take photographs, it is just fabulous. So get your camera ready, number one. If that's your thing, because you're gonna just love Venice as far as subject matter. Okay, first must do, here again, like I said, start at Piazza San Marco, start at St. Mark's Square, and try to do most everything there, even though it's very crowded and there are a lot of people there, and it's touristy to a certain extent, unfortunately, but that's where it all started, really, and that's what you need to go. You need to step into the basilica. You need to do the Doge Palace. It's just beautiful, and do take the tour. I know a lot of people don't like to take tours, but this one is pretty good because you get a real good feel, like I said, on how Venice really is and how it was different than everywhere else.
Like the historical context of Venice?
Oh, yeah, and like, you know, all of the feuds between these banking and these merchant families and the intrigues and all of that. It really is interesting to know that. And, you know, the Casanova phenomenon and the courtesan. I mean, it all plays, you know, into the games and the cunningness and everything that went on in there. So you get kind of that that background. So, you'll appreciate more why they design things certain ways. And here again, like, why in the world would they walk around with masks? That just sounds ridiculous unless they're up to no good. Well, they were not totally up to no good. They were just trying to get one up on you.
On the other.
Pretty good in a unique way. Plus, they loved pageantry, very much so. Perfume, fancy clothes, and the mask. That was so Venetian. And they loved it, and for a long time it went on until Napoleon came, really, and messed everything up. Okay, so, and then one other thing in the area of Piazza San Marco is the Museum Carrera. Now, a lot of people don't like to really take times to go into museums, but this one is kind of, here again, another must, because it just gives you the whole history of Venice in terms of interior design. You see all these gorgeous rooms. It was a palace itself. You see paintings, and it's all done in time frame. And it's a good like an hour to go in there. They have a lovely cafe and museum shop. So I do suggest doing that. So that's the first thing. Start at Piazza San Marco, where everybody starts. Okay. Then the next thing, and do this when you first go to Venice. I think a food tour is a must, because Venice's food is different than Italy, most of Italy's food. They basically, they have a lot of seafood and seafood dishes. There's no real farmland right around Venice or anything. I mean, they do have in the Veneto hills and everything, and they ship stuff in, but it's expensive. Anything that has to come in by boat is expensive. Fish is not expensive. So they have a lot of fish dishes. So the food tour is very good because, first of all, it gives you some background on, why it's different, the Eastern and Western influences, the different types of food that are unique to Venice. You go to different types of restaurants, whether it's an osteria or a borcola or trattoria, and what the differences are. And what I did was I did some research before I went on my trip, and I decided to take the food tour that was titled Off the Beaten Path, because it was put together as a progressive dinner, and it was 3.5 hours long, and I just thought it had a lot to it. So it was a little pricey, $120, and if you do take this particular tour, don't eat lunch. Just starve yourself, because I can tell you, I think we stopped at 8 different places. Whoa. And we had alcohol and food. Well, maybe at one place we didn't have alcohol, one place we didn't have food. But we started off a beautiful square right near Rialto, the Rialto Bridge, and we had a wonderful spritz. And they went into, spritz, exactly what it is, white wine, Campari, and a shot of seltzer, and everybody likes to drink spritz because it's so hot and humid in Venice. And spritz is the kind of thing that you don't really get drunk with. It just gives you a little kind of like coffee, but not
like a little refreshment, a little pick-me-up kind of thing.
Yes, and so they love that. Then they love these little small plates, because the fishermen and the workers that were in there a long time ago, first of all, they were poor, and they couldn't afford, really expensive or exotic dishes. They just wanted some little something so they weren't starving. So Venice kind of developed a whole cuisine around small plates and small little things to eat that was just like a snack. Like, they're big snackers. But they have what's called cicchetti. And cicchetti are these little like hors d'oeuvre like things that are on pieces of bread, like a small piece of toast or something, and they'll have spreads on it, whether they're fish spread or some kind of olive-based spread with spices, and then a cheese or sardine on top, or prosciutto or whatever. And so during the day, somebody might go and have or hit a cicchetti bar 2 or 3 times, never really eating a meal, just getting 1 or 2 little small bites and maybe a little half a spritz, and that's all that they needed. And they were raring to go and do whatever they needed to do. We also we went to a barcola, which was owned by an old elderly Venetian woman that was still cooking in the kitchen. But her specialty was called, and this is something that they all eat, they're called polpette or polpetti, something like that. But it's a meatball, and it's a small. Sometimes it's fried, sometimes it's not. And these meatballs are to die for. So Venice, these polpettes everybody eats these, and all of these different barcolas and small restaurants, they compete to who makes the best polpette. And people go from, in their neighborhoods, they'll eat polpette here one day and polpette there. And everybody all knows each other there. That's another thing, especially like in the Cannaregio neighborhood where really most of the Venetians live. They really do. They talk to each other. They know each other. And, because there are no cars. So you have to walk to the store. You have to walk this. This no car is wonderful. I mean, it's enough to make you want to think, the car started something that really has been very stressful to mankind, I think. So the food tour is great, and we tried Prosecco, antipasti, and like at the very end, we had a big sit-down dinner at a trattoria, and we were outside, and we had candlelight, and all this food, and Italian singer serenading us and everything. But it was beautiful. It was a beautiful, kind of coolish night, and very atmospheric and just wonderful. And we ended it, of course, at the best gelato shop in the city. And it was a wonderful tour because I really did understand what good Venetian food is, where you find it, because this is a big tip, gang. In Venice, there is a lot of bad, expensive food. And I did get clipped at one restaurant that I'll never forget, and I'll tell you about it in a little bit. But they're notorious for very expensive bad food because it's really a place of tourism now, and so they're just trying to make as much money as they can, unfortunately. But if you know where to eat and you know what to eat, you can have wonderful food at reasonable prices. So I really do highly recommend the food tour, and to do it at the very beginning. Now, there's one other thing when I talk about food I want to talk about. There are a lot of canal side cafes. Now, the bad experience that I had on the Grand Canal, well, I'll just tell you about it now. I had walked all through San Polo, and this was the day that I was going to just do some really cool boutique and where the best artisans are. And I mean, I was exhausted. I had stopped for gelato, but that was it since breakfast. So I thought, I will have a nice pizza by the Rialto Bridge, Chianti, and then I'll walk back to my hotel and call it a day. Well, I was walking around and I saw this one restaurant, and it really did look nice in terms of how it was done, the furniture, and it looked like it had been there for a long time, and etc. But there was nobody in it. I thought, oh, good, there's nobody in it, so I'll get served quick. Okay. And so I sat and I said, I want to be right on the Grand Canal. They said, oh, no problem. So I sat down and I saw fake flowers, plastic flowers. Now, let me tell you something. Never eat anywhere where there are fake flowers. I should have known. But there were a couple other couples out there. So I thought, look, I am so hungry. They can't mess up a pizza. I mean, I'll just get a pizza and, like I said, a glass of Chianti. So I ordered a margarita pizza and came out. So I started eating. And I thought, this doesn't have any taste. Did they forget something? It just doesn't taste like anything. I mean, the cheese didn't taste like anything. The tomatoes didn't taste like anything. It was like fake food or something. So I thought, well, maybe it's just me. I don't have the taste for Venetian pizza or something. So I was saying, I'm going to start in on the second piece. Maybe I'll acquire an appreciation for it. And so I got about a third way through. I said, this is so bad. I could not believe it. And I noticed that the couple across from me, they also had a pizza and they hadn't eaten it. So after a while I said, how do you think their pizzas are here or something like that? And they looked at me and I said, I know. Isn't this the worst pizza in the whole world? I've never had pizza this bad. And they said, it's unedible. So my point is, here again, you have to be careful where you eat in Venice, because that's not the only place in Venice that has very low quality food that's in a good location that's expensive. So if there's nobody in there and fake flowers, don't go. But a lot of people go in there because
location and appearance, the things that got you.
Yeah, and then, it's slow in Venice, and I'm going to go into that too. Everything is slower there. So, we're used to fast service, sit down, blah, 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 get your food, especially when you're hungry. So I thought, oh, this is great. There's not a lot of people in there. I'll get served. Whew, no. Okay. Number 3. Just choose a couple of the palazzos to go visit. There are probably 10 to 15 that are really fabulous, but they're spread out. A lot of them are on the Grand Canal, but it's still, they're a distance away from each other. And you'll have to take the Vaporetto or walk, and that always takes time, etc. So, pick out, say, 2 or 3 that really you should go to, and then you'll get pretty much what a palazzo is all about and what it was like to live and be a Venetian aristocrat a long time ago. But the first and foremost, again, is like that Doge Palace, that beautiful pink, lacy Gothic palace right there at the entrance of St. Mark's Square. I mean, it is really one of the most iconic buildings in the world. And it's a must. The next one is called Rizzogno, and it is a fabulous palazzo museum, and it showcases one of the wealthiest families that ruled their area of Venice and really was very powerful for a long time in Venetian history. And you'll see the wonderful interiors, the marble. Oh, they have so much marble walls and floors and marble furniture, the Pierduri and the fabulous fabrics, whether it's the Fortuny or the brocades and all the Venetian glass, the chandeliers, the lamps. I mean, it's almost like a fantasy. I mean, it is so opulent, kind of a cold and regal way. It's different than what you see, very different than what you see in France and in England, and that it's Italian, but it's a different type of Italian. And in this particular palace, this family and the heads of this family, I mean, they really thought that they were something. In their palace, they had a throne room. And let me tell you something, that throne was, Peter the Great didn't have a throne that unbelievable. And the portraits of themselves and the frames, some of them, they seem to be 3 feet wide. I mean, in gold gilded. I mean, the Pope couldn't touch these people. people in terms of just magnificent paintings and regalia. But they had it in their own palazzos. You see what I'm saying? So when you went to do business with him, you had to go into the first room, the second room. Well, it took you probably a year to get even close to that throne room. But if you made it to the throne room, you probably had a deal going. But I thought that was so, because I have never really seen palaces with throne rooms. I mean, you see it with the kings and queens. But when I said at the beginning of the show, Venice was different. It wasn't ruled by one king or queen or the Vatican. It was ruled by all these little, fiefdoms, all right there in this city. And so, sometimes that's why the bridges, they'd fight over the bridges, they'd close the bridges, they'd have all these feuds. I mean, this was a very different place. So you had to be smart, cunning, but you couldn't be really dishonest. That was another thing they kept saying. They didn't like people who are really bad people. You just had to be really good at playing the game. So I thought so you could really see it in this palace. This was an ego extraordinaire. And then there was another palazzo called Palazzo Mocenigo, or Moceneigo, beautiful palazzo, and it specialized in just all of the fabulous former styles and costumes that the Venetians wore, whether they were men or women, and they were beautiful. I mean, the Venetians were the first really, I think, society that just really went all out in clothes. I mean, you saw it in France and Paris, but the Venetians had this flair that was just something else, and the quality of those fabrics and everything. It's something to see. I mean, I love fashion, so I like to see everything. But it really, it's beautiful, and all of the brocades on the walls and the tapestries, and it also, in this particular museum, they had a wonderful perfume exhibit, and I've mentioned it before, but perfume was so important to this society, and it originated from the spice trade that came from the East, but they really got into it. They not only made a lot of money with it, it was just part and parcel of being a real Venetian, and they're a couple of very distinctive Venetian scents and perfumes. And in this particular museum, they had a wonderful perfume exhibition, and it went into all, how the perfumes were made and what the distinctive scents are, and you got to smell the essential oils, and they were put in these long, tubular, gorgeous Venetian, hand-blown. I mean, the whole exhibit was, extraordinary. So, you got to kind of see from this particular museum how, seductive the Venetians really were in terms of what they wore, their mask, and their perfume. You really could all put it together by seeing this beautiful palace and how they exhibited, this aspect or these aspects of Venice. I loved it, so I think you should go there. Then the other one that is, I think, a must, is Peggy Guggenheim's Palazzo. Now, hers is very different. It's the only single-story palazzo on the Grand Canal. And she was an American. She was not Venetian. And she fell in love with Venice. But oddly, she wasn't into a Renaissance or classic Venetian art. She was into modern art. So she was one of the biggest individual collectors of modern art. In the early part of our century, she was friends with Picasso and Klee and Miro, Warhol. She helped a lot of, I think, Man Ray, she even supposedly started his career or funded him. She might have even married him once. She married several times. She was extremely wealthy, and kind of eccentric. Everybody says she was eccentric. But to go to her palazzo is very interesting because you can see her art collection, which is formidable. And then she decorated her palazzo very minimalist. It's almost like she was the first minimalist in Venice. And Venice is anything but minimalist. So she had beautiful antiques in there, but the way she did it had a whole modern kind of essence to it. And she combined it with the modern paintings. Then she had a sculpture garden outside in the back. And she buried all of her dogs back there. I mean, she just worshipped her dogs. She had like 7 dogs. And then in the front, she had a beautiful terrace and everything by the Grand Canal. So it's totally different than any other palazzo in Venice. But you should go see it because the Venice art fair, and Venice has. Art is important to Venice, and she was the one that kind of drug them into the modern age and modern creativity. So, you should do that. Then a couple others that are good that I wouldn't say they're must-dos, but I want to mention them because they're both good.
They still made the cut.
They still made the cut. The next one is the Fortuny Palazzo. Now, Fortuny was the gentleman who made this fabulous silk fabric that he stenciled on designs on top of it. And this fabric today is still extremely expensive and found in the finest homes in the world, and also in clothes from time to time. But these fabrics are very distinctive, gorgeous. Anybody who knows anything about Fortuny fabrics, everybody goes, oh my God, yes, Fortuny is just... So he was from Venice, and he created this type of fabric. And unlike the merchants who were dealing with spices and different things that came through Venice or just banking, he created a new product. So that was kind of unique to have somebody come up and get real wealthy from being an artisan, per se, okay? Well, his palazzo is different. It's not right on the Grand Canal. It's kind of in one of the, it might be in San Paolo, I'm not quite sure exactly where it is, but it's close to there. But it is very dark. It's very different. It has a lot of wood in it. He's got a lot of different paintings, some of them very erotic. He's got all kinds of glass. He's got one big long table with all clear glass and all these different designs, modern and older looking, but he has it all placed. He was a weird, I don't want to say he was weird. He was very creative and, talk about a mysterious kind of guy. And he lived in a certain way, but opulent. And I found it very interesting. Now, there wasn't a lot of his fabrics in there, which I was kind of upset, but I did get to see kind of his psyche in how he lived. So I found that interesting because it's another side of what, Venice is all about. Then 2 others are the Ca' Foscari and the Ca' d'Or. Both of those are supposed to be really great. I didn't make it there, but, like I said, when you go to Venice, you're gonna waste a lot of time, and I'll tell you all about that in a minute. Okay, the fourth thing is to shop in the San Polo area. This is the area where all the artisan shops, a lot of the real exclusive shops are, that the way Venice used to be. Unfortunately, because of all of this influx of tourism, there are supposedly over 20 million tourists that come to Venice every year. This is their biggest, really only business now. So they have all of these knockoff, inexpensive, imitation good shops. It's unbelievable. When I first went to Venice, they didn't have anything like that. That would have been like, heresy or something to have that. In Venice? No. But now I can tell you, 95% of the shops are like that.
Wow.
And it's really, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. But here again, like I said at the beginning of the show, most of the real estate in Venice now, especially in the real high traffic areas, are owned by foreigners. And they just want the cash flow. And, you know, the quality shops and the artisans, they can't compete with anything like that. So, but they're still alive and well in certain areas in the San Polo area. So if you want to see the really quality still things that you can buy in Venice, this is a great area. And there's a particular street, they call them Calli. It's Calli Seconde Saoneri, and it's Calli, C-A-L-L-E, Seconde, S-E-C-O-N-D-E, and the last word is S-A-O-N-E-R-I. And you can ask anybody. If you ask what's the best street in São Paulo to walk for specialty shopping, they'll probably tell you that street. But it's wonderful. Beautiful fabric shops there. You can really see the brocades, the tapestries, the different linens, whether it's for housewares or it's actually in pillows or even some clothes, etc. So wonderful in terms of fabrics and fabric shops. Wonderful glass shops, whether it's, you know, I went into one shop and I had a really nice conversation with this lady. She had married a Venetian. She was originally from Paris, but she was an artist. And she took old pieces of Venetian glass and put them together and created sculpture-like bases for lamps. And she had all of these really unique, one-of-a-kind lamps in there. And, you know, lamps are also something that's very unique to Venice in terms of certain styles. They have that lampshade that kind of looks like a sail on a schooner, kind of they're like a half a lampshade. And they also do a lot of things with fabrics and beautiful handmade papers for shades. So lamps, in creating beautiful lamps, and lighting has always been important in Venice, which I think is so funny because, you know, they want everything to be a mystery, but they have all these fancy
lamps
and chandeliers. I mean, let me tell you, you never can really totally figure these people out. I think they're sophisticated in a real, here again, mysterious way, and it's different. So they had the lamp shops. I loved meeting this French woman. She was so interesting. She also had some artwork and some antique furniture to buy, you know, in her shop. But there are places where you can buy gorgeous works of art in glass, and like paintings. Like they'll put kind of I don't know exactly what the technique is, but what I'm sharing with you is this is where you have all these wonderful specialty shops. I know there are a lot of leather shops there. And before, when the first couple of times I went to Venice, there were lots of leather shops where you could buy handmade shoes, belts, purses, briefcases, anything in leather, coats, jackets, all kinds of stuff. You don't see that very much anymore, you know. There are a few of the real Italian shops that do it, but most of them are these knockoff shops. Well, I bought this, I think this cutest purse, and I might never wear it, but it's so cute. It's got white and black little strips, about inch strips that go up, and it's kind of shaped like a big pear, and then it ties at the top with like a black tie-like thing and a silver, you know, a little silver, I guess, accents, and then has two black handles, and it's kind of a bigger. That is the cutest purse. It looks so Venetian, you know, a little Harlequin, but more aristocratic than Harlequin. I love that purse, but I bought it in that area. So that is the area that you need to go to if you really want to shop, okay? Because you're much more likely it'll be made in Italy in this area than anywhere else, except maybe around Piazza San Marco. But you still have to be careful there, because there are a few that have kind of gotten in there that it's made in somewhere else. So, okay, next thing is explore the district or the area of Cannaregio. Now, this area is what I really think is Venice, because it's where the Venetians live still. This is where it's the least expensive. They work there, they eat there, they shop there, they socialize there, and you can really just feel the life there. And this is actually where I chose my hotel. And I stayed in a beautiful boutique hotel on one of the canals that I just had a delightful stay. And it's called the Amore di Oriente, and it has a little bit of a Moorish feel to the hotel, but it's beautiful. I mean, I loved every minute of my stay there. Every night I would sit outside and have a glass of wine, and I met a lot of different travelers, and you can watch the boats go on the little canal, and the gentleman who ran the bar, he knew exactly what I needed. And they had a wonderful prosciutto plate with melon and cheese. I mean, everything was just so nice and very comfortable. And this whole area in there, you'll see a lot of people sitting outside, one or two tables outside of a very small restaurant, and just enjoying life. And that's really Venice. That's really Venice. So spend some time in this area. And, here again, if you want to buy something, like what happened with me, I went to Venice in late September. I thought it'd be a little on the coolish side by then. So I brought just a little bit of heavier clothes. Not really, but things that I could layer. Well, when I got there, it was still hot and humid. It was so hot and humid when I first got there. And let me tell you, Venice can feel like the tropics. So I said, I have to go buy something linen, a linen shirt, maybe some linen pants, and, maybe 2 shirts or whatever. Well, I went down this real little alleyway. When I tell you they have some alleyways in there that you can't get 2 people side by side. I mean, these are really alleys. And that's another thing about Venice. It's like one big maze, and these little alleys. But you really never get lost, okay? Well, so I found this little shop. It's so little you could barely get in. It's a door and had just a tiny window, but what she had in there was so cute. So I went in there. I think I bought a necklace for $5. I bought some kind of linen top that was loose. It was really cute for $8. Some pair of pants with a drawstring top that had kind of palazzo bottoms to it for another $8. I spent less than like $30 or something, and I got exactly what I needed, just the kind of clothes you wear in Venice. And here again, it's not a happenstance that palazzo pants probably came from that area, because you need loose-fitting natural fabrics. But you can buy them so cheap here. That's what I'm trying to say. So this area is where the real Venetians live, and it's not that expensive. So the restaurants with the food, etc. Also, this is the area where the Jewish ghetto was, and this was the original or the largest Jewish ghetto, and I think the first Jewish ghetto in the world. And it is the only place in Venice that the buildings are allowed to be 5 stories. I think it's 4 stories. There's a height limit in Venice, restriction, but there's a little bit higher. So you can see it's kind of like more of a barrier, a natural kind of building fortress barrier. But you go into the ghetto, and it's very historic. So I suggest that, especially if you like Judaica or you're interested in Jewish history, it's very interesting in there. And then they also have a Jewish museum. They have a couple of really nice cafes. And then the day that I went, I had the most wonderful thing that happened. I was leaving. I had had a cup of coffee, and I was ready to kind of go somewhere else. And I was leaving, and I saw this little gallery, and it had an easel with a painting out, and it said Tony Green, Venice and New Orleans. I went, what? Venice and New Orleans? Who lives in Venice and also lives in New Orleans? I'm going in here. Plus, the painting looked very Carnival-like, and New Orleans and Mardi Gras, and I guess too. Now that I bring that up, Venice, more than anywhere I've ever been, has those qualities of New Orleans: the decadence, the historic kind of don't change. The things that are hidden there, love of clothes, and good food, and just there's a lot of similarities in the feel and the psyche of New Orleans and Venice. Well, I go into this gallery and I introduce myself, and he said, hey, so it's typical New Orleans. He's born and raised in New Orleans. I said, God, I can't believe, Tony. And I said, I love your work. His work is very colorful, and he's quite talented. So he told me he was also a musician, and that he lived 6 months in New Orleans and 6 months in Venice, and he was telling me how wonderful Venice was, and he actually took me back, and we had another cup of coffee at one of the cafes where he had some of his artwork, beautiful paintings of Romeo and Juliet in different kind of situations and scenes. I mean, he's a really very, I loved his work. His work had a lot of color in it and a lot of life, and they're just happy paintings. They're good. You like looking at them, and he was just like that. So that was a whole lot of fun. So here again, he lived in Cannaregio, and he was part of the fabric. He had been there now for about 18 years. So that's the vibe that you get there. These people are, they're friendly, they work, they're interesting, and it's not the tourist part. That's one thing, and so that's wonderful, because that unfortunately is the big problem of Venice. But okay, so spend a whole day in Cannaregio, a whole day in Sao Paulo if you like to shop, a whole day around Piazza San Marco, because you're not going to want to rush it, and you're not going to be able to rush it, I can tell you, for various reasons. The next thing is take a specialty walking tour. A lot of people don't like to take any of these tours or whatever, but in Venice they have some of the best ones that are. They have a Times of Casanova, and you'll learn everything about Casanova. And I'm telling you, the Venetian men, they all kind of want to be a little Casanova. I mean, they want to be able to get any lady they want and get away with it. So, but you learn about, all about him, not only about his, his
exploits.
Yeah, his talents. but he was smart, and he did a lot of different things, and he was a survivor. And that's another thing about Venice. Venice is a survivor. Even if they don't have any money, these people they're solid. So, he's a very interesting character, and he explains or kind of gives you a side of Venice that is more prevalent than just in his life and time. So that's a good walking tour. Then there's another one, Hidden Venice. A lot of the different intrigues that went on, and what went on, and just that's a really good one too, from with the courtesans to the business to the feuds to everything. And then two that aren't historic, one is the private Venice shopping tour, and I didn't take that, but that's probably great, because it'll take you to really the best shops. Or if you want to tell the person, I only want to do leather shopping or whatever, because there's so many shops in Venice, and like I said, 95 to 98% of them are very marginal. You don't really want to buy anything there. And the other one is a photography tour. And there are lots of these walking photography tours. And if you like to take photos, that's probably great because the subject matter of Venice is just, is fabulous. So, ask your concierge if you don't really know which ones to take or you hadn't done your research before or whatever. Ask the concierge because they have a lot of really good walking tours. Okay, a couple of day outings where, you have to get outside of the city of Venice, but it's worth it. Now, there are two outlining islands that everybody, is told to go to, Murano and Burano. And they're both specialty islands for different reasons. But what most people do is try to do both of them in one day, and please don't do that because, it's just awful. Murano is where all the glass blowing factories are, and they have, I think 4 or 5 that are open to the public, and you get to watch the glass blowers blow and create, etc. It's kind of touristy, but it's worth going to see because it's, and you'll see different glass blowers in different shops from time to time, and you can watch them, and they'll make specific things for you. If they're not doing something that they already have to, if you say you want like a little lion or you want a candle holder or whatever, they'll do it right there in front of you. But so you want to have enough time to go to the factory, and then in the factories they have gorgeous shops there. I didn't find them to be that expensive. A lot of times when you go to the factories, those gift shops are pretty expensive. But the one I went to, they had some chandeliers in there that were just really to die for. And they were like $2,500, $2,800. And I thought, oh my God, I thought this would be $28,000, not $2,800. Beautiful things. And so all kinds of different things made out of blown glass. Gorgeous. So you want to go to the factory. Then they have a glass museum. And this is very interesting too because it shows you everything that can be made out of glass. And whether it's a contemporary look or a Renaissance look. I even saw these gorgeous silk-covered chairs with glass frames. The chairs were made, they had glass in the frame. They can do anything with glass. It is amazing. And in this museum, you get to see all of the different types of styles and how they do it and how they used it and for different objects, etc. It's worth it. It's worth going to see. You think, oh golly. So I really enjoyed that. Then they have so many glass shops there, whether it's jewelry shops or shops where you can buy lamps or bowls or glasses, anything that can be made out of glass is there. So if you want to really take your time and look into all of these different ones, and this is an area where a lot of them are made from the Murano factories. Now, one of my tips is you have to see, there's a big round sign that says, authentic Murano glass, and it's a big shield, it's a government thing. So you want to make sure that where you're buying and what store you're buying has that shield and it has made in Italy on it. Because then you are buying glass from Murano. And those things are really, they're the real thing. So that's how you make sure that you don't get something that you think is Murano glass that's not. So it takes time to get out to Murano on the Vaporetto, and then you'll want to eat there. And so you don't want to be 2 hours there and rush on the boat and then go to Burano. Now, Burano is another outlying area, and it's totally different than Murano. Murano has more of a Venetian feel, but it's got the factory feel. Burano reminds me of like the Caribbean or something. The architecture is so different. It's very plain, flat-fronted with shutters. And all the different buildings and homes and apartment buildings and dwellings, they're painted in bright pastel colors. I mean, it kind of looks like Brighton Beach. I mean, you'll have a pink and a blue and a yellow and green and purple shutters and these blowing curtains that's over the doors. I mean, it is really, it's a very different place. And it is known for their handmade lace. They have lace makers that have secret patterns that they have handed down for generations. So they have beautiful lace here, beautiful linens here, and it has a whole different feel. Huh. So I spent a wonderful day there. I didn't really hardly buy anything, but I loved going there looking for it. Some great restaurants there. I had a wonderful steamed mussels with string fries and a glass of white wine. I could have stayed there and never left. It was just so atmospheric. And like I said, I described those several words at the beginning. Venice, this kind of atmosphere, the decadence, the history, it's everywhere in a different kind of like a little twist to it. So Burano is definitely worth spending a whole day for. Then the last day trip is if you have enough time. Like I went to Venice and I was there for 8 days and then 2 travel days. So my whole excursion was 10 days. But I took a full day to go to the Veneto wine area, which is about an hour away from Venice. And it's up in the beautiful hill country going towards the mountains north of Venice. Oh my gosh, this was just a beautiful day because we went into some of the older towns. Like we had Cappuccino was our first stop, and we went to the square. And forgive me, I can't remember the name of these towns, but it's in the Veneto hill country. But it had this big chessboard or checkerboard kind of square. And our guide was telling us this is where they have the international human chess contests every year. And they used to do human chess in this area of Italy. Now, isn't that unusual? I've never even heard of that. No, yeah. I've never seen it, but they have it. They have it in different places. No, you see, you learn things all the time. And then we went into another small town that was beautiful, picturesque, with just a still working fountain out in the middle of the square, and we had this wonderful handmade pasta lunch, and I think he was telling me some movie stars like to hide away in this place. After that, we actually went into the hills and the vineyards. Oh, that was wonderful. We went to a winery and had wine tasting. So the whole day was, and it's just an hour away from Venice, was a completely different feel from what you get in Venice. Plus you realize then why the wine is so good in Venice and why it's so cheap. That's another thing. In Venice, wine is cheaper than water, especially in Cannaregio, the neighborhood where I stayed. So, and the wine that is made in this region is wonderful. So I suggest doing that. If you have the time, take the time to do the wine tour in the Veneto region. And we ended that tour, I don't want to forget this, with visiting the most beautiful palazzo I had ever seen. Now, this is not like a Venetian palazzo. It's for like Palladio, the famous architect, very balanced, just very Italian. The interior of this palazzo was really the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life. It bar none, because it was so simple and so refined and just unbelievably fabulous. What it was is you walked in, all the walls were beautiful pastel, colorful frescoes. All the furniture was slip-covered in white, in kind of a white, like a shabby chic fabric, and then the marble floors. But the way this was done, so simple, with these fabulous frescoes on the wall, and just the quality of the original structure, I thought, now, this is class. You don't need all this other junk going around. Just a few things right, but really right. And this was really right. I mean, it was gorgeous. So that was another thing that I had never seen, architecture that beautiful and simple and really Italian. And Palladio is, one of their greatest architects that ever was. So that is worth doing it. Next thing is attend a Vivaldi concert. Now, I know a lot of people aren't into classical music, but the Venetians were, and Vivaldi was their Mozart, basically. And his music is gorgeous. Vivaldi, I mean, you listen to his music, and it's going to put you in an upbeat mood, because it's just perfect. It's perfect. And so they have lots of live concerts of string quartets and different types of musical groups that do Vivaldi concerts, whether they're in the little neighborhood churches or in smaller theaters or whatever. And I went to one, and I'm a former music major, so of course I loved it. But I guarantee you, even if, like I said, you don't like classical music, you will love this, because it's just so beautiful. So I strongly recommend doing that, and there are lots of opportunities to do it. But do it. It's worth it. Okay? Then the next thing is to have a Bellini. Now, for people who don't like alcohol or don't drink, then, this is not a must-do. But the Bellini is a drink, a cocktail, that originated in Venice. His name was Giovanni Cipriani, who had the famous Harry's Bar. Now, that's another place everybody goes. I actually didn't make it to Harry's Bar this last time. Very touristy. But the Bellini, if you like cocktails at all, this is delicious. It is, especially if you get it at a really good place. It's made out of Prosecco and peach nectar, and they blend it or whatever. It is so refreshing, and it's definitely screams Venice. And what I had it at that Cafe Quandri, at that Michelin restaurant, which is fabulous. And then I also wanted to have it at Hotel Cipriani, which this hotel is, there's three that are the top hotels, I think. Greedy Palace, Hotel Denali, and Hotel Cipriani. But Hotel Cipriani, I've always thought was, I don't want to say the best, but it's on its own island, Judaica, and it's away. So in order to get there, you have to take their private water taxi, and it's really romantic. The whole thing is, you leave by the right there by Plaza San Marco. You go over to the Judaica Island, and then there's Hotel Cipriani, just like you've seen in the movies. So I decided I'm going out there at sunset. I'm going to take the sunset boat, and I'm going to sit outside. Well, I did just that. Well, they had music. I think it was a piano and a saxophone. I had two Bellinis, and I happened to have my journal, so I was kind of journaling a little bit. It was just beautiful sitting out there while the sun went down. I'll never forget it. So to enjoy a Bellini or two in the afternoon, must do, wherever you do it. But I do caution you, go to somewhere that is really good, really well respected, because you could get a bad Bellini. And you don't want to get a bad Bellini. You want to get the real thing, even if it costs you a little bit more. Okay, a couple other must-dos that I think you might not want to do it, but I think it's a must-do. the Accademia Museum. Now, this is pure Venetian paintings, but it is the best collection of Venetian paintings in the world. It's near the Peggy Guggenheim Museum. It's on everybody's, to-do list for people who come to Venice. But there are a lot of people, once they see the Doge Palace or if they go to Museum Carrero, they don't want to go to another museum to just look at Venetian paintings. Because once you see a Tintoretto and a Bellini and a Toranetti or whoever, a Canaletto, I mean, you get their style and you get their subject matter. And, whether it's a portrait or it's a religious painting or whatever, you just kind of get it. You're not an art major, so you don't want too much of it. But I thought it was worth it. I went, and let me tell you, I went in every room and looked at it, and it did give me an even more comprehensive understanding of the life and times and how Venice started, and why it was so great, and what made it tick, why it was so special. So I think it's great. Then, the next one, you have to take a gondola ride. Now, this is the most touristy thing you could do.
Too bad. It's Venice. You have to.
You have to. Whether you're by yourself or you hitch a ride with some others, because, gondola can take as many as 6 people. Or if you've gone, with a significant other or friend. But you have to do it. It's very expensive. 30 minutes, $100. And if you do it after 7 p.m., between 7 p.m. and 8:30 in the morning, it's even more expensive. So you have to do it. What I suggest you do it right before sunset, before 7, okay? And catch it, you can catch it either Piazza San Marco or, close in the San Marco area and some of those canals. You can catch them. But that doesn't make them cheaper. They're all expensive. And most of them, unfortunately, I hate to say this, their attitude is less than energetic. But I found this young kid and I said, look, I want to do the gondola, but if you won't sing, I don't want to go with you. He said, "Okay, I'll sing for you," and he did. And he was cute, and so he strolled. He pedaled me through the Grand Canal, not very far, and then we went back into some interior canals. But he did take me by Casanova's house and where Vivaldi, lived. Now I hope he was telling me the truth. But I did it, and I've done it with my husband, and I've done it another time before. So, but you have to do that,
Yeah.
So, if you find a group that only has 3, say, well, do you mind if I join
Tag
you?
along, yeah.
And I'll your cost will come down. So, but you got to do that. Then the next thing is visit a mask shop. You'll see so many masks and so many knockoff masks, but to go to a real mask shop, and the one that I think is the best is the Macana, and it's in Dorsoduro. I can't say any of these Italian words. I speak German, Italian, but it's fascinating to watch them make these masks and to see all the different kinds of masks and the variation of the different themes. They have certain character masks like the doctor, the lawyer, the servant, the butcher, the hunter, lust, joy, all these kinds of different things. Well, you will see so many different variations of them, and you'll see them done in some ways very classical and pure. But to go into these shops, and a lot of times, like the one that I went into, the guy who was the mask making person who was working, he was very nice, very talkative. I asked him this, that, and the other. He let me try on all kinds of different ones and take selfies. He didn't care. But that's, you really do need to go into one of these shops. And if you want to buy one, don't buy one of the cheaper ones that you'll see all over. Buy a little small one that's made by a real mask maker. It just goes with the whole trip. It's because they do beautiful work, and they're affordable enough. You don't have to get one of the very elaborate ones. And boy, they can do things with feathers and shellacs and all this stuff and beads, and it really is. They're works of art. Then two more things. Both of these are touristy, but I have to say them because I did think that they were actually worth it, and I don't like touristy things. But this was a show called Venezia, and this was theater. And it was all about the story of Venice, but it was really more of a character study of the different kinds of characters of Venice. They had the one that was, wanted to be Casanova, and then then they had the priest. The priest was the one that was always the one doing all the dirty work in town. You'd think he would be the one that was helping everybody cleanse their sins. No, when people were in trouble, they went to the priest to do the dirty work. This play was hilarious, but I really did enjoy it because they were all dressed up, and the actors were just really trying to impress you. You had a buffet dinner. There was a little gift shop afterwards that actually wasn't too bad. So it's not chic by any means. It's not the theater. But I liked it. I thought it was worth going to. And when you travel solo and at night, I don't go to bars and stuff like that. Now, I do like to drink a glass or two of wine, but it's usually always at my hotel. And the hotels that I go to, I don't go into places that I think are basically party scenes or pickup scenes or anything like that. So in the evening, if I want to do something, I like to do something that I will be entertained or I think that has some value. So this was one of the things that I could walk to and then walk back to my hotel. So I decided to do it, and it was really worth it. I was kind of shocked, to tell you the truth. So, if you're there long enough, take in Venezia, the show. And then the last thing, and this is another must-do, but oh my God, this is so touristy, is go to the Rialto Bridge. The Rialto Bridge is gorgeous. This was the center of commerce in the days gone by in Venice. And it still has all the shops going up and down, and then the restaurants where I had the horrible pizza, the worst pizza in the world. But it's so crowded. It's so crowded. It's just terrible. And so everybody's trying to take, that it shot off the Rialto Bridge. And it's really it's got a lot of tension there. And so you have to go there. But try to go there early in the morning. And it's probably the best time to go because you've got the fish market right down there at the base of it. And the fish market is been there since the 1500s. Or earlier. I don't know. I can't remember what my food tour guy actually said. But it's amazing. And you'll see all those weird sea urchins that I told you about that I ate at that fancy restaurant. But you have to go to the Rialto Bridge. So those, Catherine, are basically the must-dos. And I really do feel like that you can't rush any of them. Except maybe the gondola, which is a shame. You'd think that you could go on a gondola for 2 hours and have them sing to you and, just listen to the lapping of the water on the bridge and the church bells and everything. But it's not like that. They just get you in there. They go down a few things. So that before I got mine, I said, look, if you don't sing, I'm going to find somebody. And he said, I'll sing to you. So, okay, well, those are my must-dos.
And Astrid, I should have said this before we got going, is listeners, I do my best to put all these places that Astrid is talking about into the show notes so you don't have to remember everything she's saying. You can enjoy the program, and you can just refer to the show notes to get all the details of all the different places that she mentioned. You mentioned a little bit about some of the touristiness and some of the expense and that awful pizza, but can you speak to any downsides of Venice?
The worst thing about Venice is there are way too many tourists. It is just horrible. 20 million tourists every year. It is like crowded Mardi Gras, Bourbon Street on Fat Tuesday. It is terrible. I mean, it rivals Disney World and everything. It is just, or even worse. So it has upset the Venetians so much. I mean, it is just really completely tearing at what really makes Venice, Venice. It's made the restaurants too expensive, a lot of bad food, the vaporettos, the water buses are just crowded. Everything's more expensive. So that is really bad. But you have to go when it's the low season, or when the cruise ships aren't there, or when there's less tourists there. So you can mitigate that somewhat. But that's a shame. It really has changed Venice dramatically over the last 35, even 40 years, which, I mean, it still has its architecture, its history and everything, but, there's so many native Venetians that have moved because it's too expensive for them to live. It's very sad. The only other bad thing is they have what's called alta Acqua. And this is their seasonal floods. And you need to know about this because the whole city can flood. So what happens is the high tide comes in off the Adriatic, and this will happen between October and January. And they really don't ever totally know when it's going to happen, but they do have sirens that alert you that it's coming. But what happens is the water can go in, it can get as high as 3 to sometimes 4 feet deep in Piazza San Marco. So you have to wear waders. Now they will build up these little high pier-like things that people can walk on. But it's really a problem. You can't roll your suitcase around. You can't get to your hotel.
Think of that. Oh wow.
Oh no. I mean, it's a real problem. And the water's dirty, and so you need to plan your trip to really be careful and not go during these times. Or if it is during these times, you just have to deal with it because it goes in and comes back out. And they're used to it. They have all these little barriers that keeps it from going into the shops and everything. But it messes up your trip for that day, etc. So those are the two big things. Besides, like I said, crowded, expensive, and touristy. That's really the only downside to Venice. Everything else is, I think, still fabulous.
Astrid, you've crafted a quick list to help our listeners with their very own trips to Venice.
Yes, I have the solo traveler's tips for visiting Venice. Real quick. First of all, pick your travel dates wisely. Just like I just said about the Acqua Alta, is that, you need to avoid when the tourists are there and try not to go when this high tide phenomenon is. So the sweet spots, the best times are late September, early October. It's not as hot then. If you go in the summer, it is extremely humid. I remember the first time I went, it was so humid that I just kind of fell asleep in the vaporetto. I was going out to Lido Island, the lapping of the and it was so hot in the sun and the humidity. It just
you got rocked to sleep there.
I did. But let me tell you, it's not pleasant. So late September, early October, maybe into the mid-October, but you're getting close to that Alta Acqua season. Then I would say like late January, February into spring is pretty good too. Just try to go when the cruise ships are not sailing in there, because that's one of the biggest reasons for the influx of tourists, okay? And the weather is better, etc. And the prices are better. Your hotels are really cheaper. Your airfare is cheaper. So pick the time, travel there wisely. The next one is bring good walking shoes. I mean, when you go to Venice, you walk, walk, walk. And on those cobblestones and over those bridges, you're going to be going up and down bridges all the time. You can't believe there's so many bridges. But after a while, you just get used to it. But you have to have good walking shoes. And I really suggest maybe 2 or 3 pair that you switch if you stay there more than a couple of days. But that's a must, no any heels or even wedges or anything like that. To tell you the truth, you just need some good walking shoes or good, you can have some fancier flats or whatever, but you'll be glad that, you didn't bring cutesy shoes, as my husband would say. Third, stay longer than you think you need to, because let me tell you something. Everything takes time. You will be surprised how much time you lose in Venice. And it's for various reasons. First of all, you got to go on the Vaporetto or you have to walk. So that takes time. The Vaporetto is good, gets you from point A to B, but they have all these little stops in between. And you have to wait for it to come and everything. So you just as soon walk across town than do that. But when you do that, you're exhausted by the time you get there. And you might get lost and turned around while you're getting there. Which... that brings me to another thing. You will get lost in Venice. Venice is, I have a excellent sense of direction. I rarely get lost or turned around. In Venice, it just seems like you're always going left when you should be going right. It's one big maze. But trust me, just like that you read in the books or whatever, is you're really not going to be lost. You're going to end up getting to one square, what they call a campo, and then that'll lead to some more alleyways, and finally you'll either be back at Palazzo San Marco or the Grand Canal or another canal, and you'll get back to where you're going. It is so mysterious how that works. But the bottom line is if you think you're going to see everything in Venice in 1 to 3 days, you're not. If you're walking or whatever, or taking the Vaporetto, everything takes so much time. So you're going to miss half of what you want to see. So stay longer than you think, because it's going to take time. And even the service personnel, they are so slow. Whether you're in the shops or you're eating, a meal that you think, I shouldn't stay here more than a half an hour, 45 minutes. Let me tell you, La Dolce Vita, it'll be at least an hour and a half before you get out of there. So you might as well just slow down. You have to do it. So you need more time. And so I really do suggest, if you really want to do Venice right, at least a week, okay? 4, beware of bad restaurants. Just know that, you need to be very careful about where you eat, because you're going to get a bad meal. It's going to be expensive. So look for, if you don't know and you don't have a food app, a good food app on your phone, or, you don't really know where you're supposed to eat or going to eat, look for the restaurants that have people in them and that look like a lot going on, because truly those are the ones that have the good food, and especially the little small ones. Okay. Tackle one district or one area at a time. This is one way you can not get as lost and do good time management and get your concierge to help you. You might have a to-do list of everything you want to do, and he'll say, well, I'll do this, in the morning and this in the afternoon. But one area at a time. Shopping in San Paolo, Cannaregio, Piazza San Marco, one day to Burano, that's the best way to do it, because you can't rush it. And so you're gonna miss it. Next thing is, and I touched on this, wear natural fabrics. Oh my God! Even in the winter, it is foggy, wet, damp in Venice. So you want to have breathable cotton wool, linens, loose fitting, that kind of thing. And layer, of course, in the winter, because it can actually snow in Venice. But that's very important. If you're not, you're going to be just like I did. You're going to be buying clothes, some loose-fitting clothes.
Desperate.
Yeah, you're desperate. Okay. Next thing is pack light. Okay, a lot of people don't think about this. They think, oh, well, I'm going to bring this, that, and the other, 2, maybe 3 suitcases. Oh, mistake. Because you're going to either come to Venice, either you can approach it by train, where you have to go over a bridge to get into Venice. Once you get into Venice, you're going to have to either walk to your hotel or take the Vaporetto to the stop close to your hotel, and then you're going to have to walk to your hotel again. You might stay at the Gritti Palace or a Hotel Denali or Hotel Cipriani, where you can go straight there and take a very expensive water taxi from the airport. But you really are going to probably want to take the Vaporetto. So what I'm driving at, you're going to have to walk with your suitcases on those cobblestones over those bridges to get to your hotel. Everybody does it. I mean, you see it all around. So what you want to do is one suitcase with one kind of tote bag or carry-on that you can lie on top of that suitcase, stroll them all together so they're not too heavy, and you can get them up those stairs of those bridges and down. Because they're not smooth bridges. You have to go upstairs a lot of times. They're old bridges.
Yeah.
So that is very important. Pack light. Next thing. Purchase a day or a week Vaporetto pass.
Oh.
Now, you're going to be using the water taxis if you stay there for any length of time. They are expensive, $7.50 one way, and you'll probably use them 4 or 5 times a day. So it makes sense to buy the $20 ticket, unless you're going to stay in one area and you don't need to go from your hotel to the other area or whatever. But consider that. And they even have a week pass, I think, for like $48. So that's even a better deal. But consider doing that, because you're going to waste a lot of money on that Vaporetto. When you come home and say, oh, my God, I spent...
How much? Yeah.
Yeah, I spent $35 today on the goofy water taxi. Okay. Beware of pickpockets. Now, this is really, I consider Venice to be very safe. I have never felt any tinge of being nefarious or whatever, even with all of this mystery that I've been talking to you about. But the pickpockets, you can kind of almost even spot them. There are a lot of them. So when you're on the Vaporettos, because it's so crowded. So when it's crowded, it's easy for them to do their quick snatch or their, pick something real quick. So make sure that you've got your valuables to where they're secure, crossbody bag that they can't cut the strap and that you can hold in the front. If you have a backpack and you're around a lot of people, put the backpack in the front of you. Don't leave it on your back, because they're really good at unzipping stuff. You might have one that's real secure, and that's good, but still just be real careful, because they are on Rialto Bridge, Piazza San Marco, Vaporetto, wherever there are a lot of people. They are ready in a second to do it. And then, there it goes. So, those are basically my tips. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but, that'll keep you from, hopefully not wasting a lot of time, not packing too many of the wrong clothes or too many clothes in general. And, just to avoid a few of the little things that can ruin your trip. So I'll end the show with a quote that is a tad wordy, but I think it really does kind of sum up Venice. It was written by Alexander Herzen. He wrote, "To build a city where it's impossible to build a city is madness in itself, but to build there one of the most elegant and grandest cities is the madness of genius." If you're a solo traveler and you're looking for one of the most unique places in the world that you can escape to and to really get a feel for the way life used to be, and just have one of those once-in-a-lifetime vacations. Visit Venice.
We trust, dear listeners, that at this point in the show, you are more than ready to set off for Italy's jewel, Venice. As you get ready, get your own copy of Astrid's complimentary packing list. Just go to astridtravel.com, download the packing list. It's right there on the front page, and we'll even have, there's a little place you can, below the post for this podcast, you can get the packing list there as well. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and now we're on TuneIn as well as iHeartRadio, so you can find us there as well. Right now, we're especially giving listeners the call to give us a rating on any of those platforms. It really will help the show, and it'll help us connect with other solo travelers. Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you are looking up your flights to Venice right now. We'll see you next week on Solo Travel Talk. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Solo Travel Talk. Follow Astrid on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. To learn more about Astrid or Solo Travel Advisors, visit our website, astridtravel.com.